Hello everyone, welcome to our video series on the sociology of innovation and entrepreneurship. I am Dr. Jerome Cleofas and I am going to be the lecturer for this specific course. And for our first video lecture, we are going to talk about innovation and innovation studies. So the topic outline for this specific video lecture is first we'll define what innovation is and kind of identify what are the characteristics of an innovation. And then we'll talk about the economic sociology of innovation, and then we'll look into the field of innovation studies. So first, let's define what innovation is. After all, that's the main phenomenon that we're going to look at for the whole of this video series. So innovation is the transformation of an existing state of things in order to make something new. So if you notice, the definition is quite vague. And that means that there are many things that are happening all around us that pertains to an innovation. So it can mean a practice, a new product, etc., etc. And we will learn about the specificities of this definition as we go through the slides. So in the first part of the textbook of Francesco Emelia on the sociology of economic innovation, they suggest certain key principles and key characteristics that makes an innovation an innovation. And the first one is that innovation is processual, or an innovation is a process. And this is derived from the work of Rogers in 2003, which is also one of the main scholars in sociology in relation to innovation. So Rogers argues that the first phase of innovation is the identification of a need or a problem that requires a solution. And I think this is quite self-explanatory. As they said, the need or a problem is the mother of innovation. And when you look at the narratives or the discourses in marketing, when they try to connect innovations or products or services to potential clients, they always identify the need. No, you are connecting a possible solution to the needs of the clientele. So this is where, probably I assume that this is where that discourse in the current ways that we do marketing came from. The second phase, according to Rogers, is the decision to carry out research to find this solution. So the first keyword here is that there should be a decision. So an innovation is born out of intent. So you do not, of course, there are things that you create unintentionally, but there was an intent to create something in the very first place. No? So that's the first keyword that I would highlight here. And the second one is that research is being employed or implemented in order to come up with possible designs for that whatever innovation that is needed for that solution, for the potential problems that are identified. The third phase, according to Rogers, is the development of innovation to give it form and content that meet the needs of the target users. So this is where knowledge transfer comes in, where the field of the pure sciences, how their computations, how they become tangible solutions that we can actually touch or experience. No, so that's the third process the third phase of the process according to Rogers. The fourth one is the marketing or the production and the distribution of the product or service that contains that innovation. So, syempre, what we want to do now is to market that product or to make sure that the people who needs solutions to their specific problems that is addressed by your innovation is being connected to your innovation. So, the production and the distribution of the innovation is the fourth phase after the development of the form of the said innovation. The next phase of innovation is the adoption and the diffusion. So it is where people actually use the innovation and hopefully integrate it to their daily lives, and hopefully also normalize it in their daily lives and daily interactions with other people. And the last part of innovation that we can also look at as social scientists are the consequences and the changes associated to the adoption of innovation. So what happens now to human beings? How is human development influenced by this innovation? How is society, or how do our communities affected by this innovation? If this is only on a specific sector, then how is that specific sector of society influenced by that innovation? And now, let's go back to the phases again, and then let's try to demonstrate it or illustrate it using a specific example. So again, the first one, we want to identify a problem or a need. So let's not look very far. One of the problems or the needs that happened during COVID-19 is that there is social distancing, there are lockdowns. So because of the social distancing and the lockdowns, we cannot really go out and be able to purchase the way we usually purchase our basic goods and services. So now what do we do? So people can't go out and be able to purchase their goods and needs. So if I am an innovator, if I'm one of the agents of innovation, I will be putting out something in order for research to be done, so that I would know how to be able to meet the needs of the people who are having problems in accessing needs because of COVID-19. So probably I would do some form of market research for me to be able to know what resources do people have in order to connect them with possible ways to purchase these basic goods. What is the current policy framework during COVID-19 for me to be able to see what avenues I can use for me to be able to deliver those services, or be able to produce services to deliver those services to people. So for example, I sell ice cream. And because of COVID-19, people can't come to my store for them to be able to buy ice cream. So what I will do is I will try to see what logistical services are available to me given the policy frameworks that are currently available for COVID-19. What are the systems and the structures that are allowed that are allowed during COVID-19? So probably I'm gonna do research of what are my possible ways to connect people with my ice cream. The number two, probably I will try to research on, or I'll try to find knowledge on if ever I'm going to do my delivery of ice cream, what would be the best way to store ice cream, so that from the time I send it out for delivery and the prospective customer receives the ice cream will still not have yet melted. So I think there's an amount of research that you have to go through, probably some testing of materials that you have to use in order to make sure that that ice cream, when accepted by the courier and then brought in a 1 hour ride from your place to a very far customer of yours, it will still be intact. Or probably you might need some chemical formulation so that the ice cream itself will not easily melt. So you will do those research. You will probably create new formulas, new recipes, or probably buy new storage packaging for your ice cream. So that's one of the things. Now you carry out the research for you to be able to connect your customers with your ice cream given the current problem of social distancing. So the third one is the development of that innovation. So you have already considered the perfect recipe to make your ice cream less melty, or you have already identified a perfect storage container for your ice cream so that it will not melt just in case it has to travel through long distances. And now you're going to operationalize it. No, you're going to make it something staple in your business. So probably new storage. No, new storage container is your new innovation, no? And probably during this time also, because you want to diversify and you have so much time at home, you probably think of new flavors for your ice cream business, no? Something like that. So next is, how do I now distribute my ice cream given that there's social distancing? So maybe I can do online, no? I can register myself in food delivery services such as Food Panda or Grab Food, no? So that people will be able to have access to my new ice cream products. And next is adoption, no? So it is hoped that your old customers in your ice cream business will be able to see that you're already in these apps, and they will now adopt your new storage container with the same ice cream inside, or probably new flavors or new formulations of your ice cream. So that's your adoption. And hopefully the people who are quite skeptical at first about your new distribution scheme for ice cream would eventually be accessed by your process, no? Especially now during the pandemic, no, even the most lolos of all the lolos and lolas in our country have no choice but to really be open and accepting about digital technologies, no, online banking, online delivery, etc., etc. And then finally, the consequences of that, no? And of course, when we look at consequences, you just don't look at like how your ice cream has affected society. I guess, no, I don't think that will be something that you'll be able to see in your specific ice cream business. But you're looking, taking a step back and looking at how the innovation in terms of food delivery services, has revolutionized the way we imagine food distribution, especially during the last 1 or more years of COVID-19 pandemic, and then we see now there's a lot of sedentary lifestyle, and there's now increased consumption of high preservative goods, high fat goods, fast food goods, kasi nga most of the delivery services are connected to this type of businesses that give out foods that can withstand delivery. So you have to put some sort of preservatives there, and then of course fast food, so that you can deliver as fast as you can, and therefore it won't be. I think there are already studies that show us that there's an increased increased prevalence of diabetes, of obesity during this time, because of course in connection also with the sedentary lifestyle, because of forced lockdowns, we also are consuming less healthier foods as a consequence of the revolutionizing of food delivery services. And we no longer get to have a deconstructed meal where you buy food and ingredients from the market. Now you have to buy it on its own, but again, a lot of preservatives, fast food, high fat, therefore causing higher prevalence of non-communicable diseases. So that's an example of how we can look at this. I won't give so many examples because this is going to be a part of your next assignment. So that's the example I'm giving. Ice cream and the food delivery business as an innovation during COVID-19 pandemic. So earlier, the phases that we identified was general to all of innovation, regardless if it's a small innovation or a big innovation. But when we talk about companies innovating, Rogers specified that there are 3 phases that companies go through when they try to make an innovative product, service, or a new distribution scheme. So the first stage, according to Rogers, is the input stage. So very similarly in the phases that we identified earlier for generalized innovation. For company innovations, in the input stage is the initiation of research and innovation by investing in human and financial resources. So, and that's the reason why big companies, they have a specific department for research and innovation, just for looking at people's possible needs of their potential customers and then creating possible solutions for their potential customers. And of course, when we talk about it from a company perspective, from an organizational perspective, innovations will always need people who will think of innovations, people who will do research on innovations, and it will need money, right? So that is for the input stage. Next is the throughput stage, the path that the company must take to transform input into output through innovation. So now that you have a new product or a new service or a new distribution channel, the throughput stage is how you market, promote that specific innovation in order for you to get the intended outputs, in order for you to get the ROIs from a business standpoint. No? So that's your throughput stage. And number 3 is the output stage, wherein the results are achieved and the fruits of innovation in terms of new products and services are already offered in the market, and it's already adopted by your consumers. So this is where the money is already coming in, where people are already consuming the products or the services that you have innovated. After the throughput stage, after all of the partnerships with suppliers, for you to be able to construct them, So the output stage is now when you get the reaps or the fruits of the innovation that you have done. So in discussing these phases, there might be a misunderstanding that innovation is a linear process, that when the first phase happens, we can only expect the second phase to happen, and then the third phase will happen. But in reality, it's actually a circular or an alternating current, especially in terms of innovation. When you do your research, it's already out there, you already marketed it, it didn't work, or there were malfunctions, so you have to go back and do research again. So when you talk about the stories or the journeys of innovation, it's a messy story. It's actually a messy journey. And when you talk about innovation and in innovation studies, they understand that while this is like the most ideal line that you go through from point A to point F, getting to point F doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have to alternate A and B, B and C. And there are so many stories of what we know as innovations now that didn't really have like a smooth sail. We know a lot of people, and that those stories of inventors and innovators who failed so many times before they were able to go and really reap the fruits of their labor. Next, innovation is relational. So innovation is relative to time period. Like for example, prior to the pandemic, the LSU has always tried to pioneer online learning. We've had Canvas and Animo Space even before the pandemic happened. I was lucky to be trained in Animo Space prior to pandemic, so it was easier for me to handle Canvas when pandemic happened. So during that time, it was it's an innovation. It was not something that every school had to go through. But now, when at this specific point in time, when I'm recording this lecture, Canvas is not such an innovation anymore. It's not such a new thing anymore. It's something that schools have to have. Well, it doesn't have to be Canvas. It can be other forms of applications or software for learning management systems. So in this specific time period, it's no longer an innovation. But the way we innovate in our online classes now is in terms of the distribution, in the implementation of the actual learning. So when you see the levels of innovation from the systemic level of innovation, the innovation now happens in the more nuanced under levels, no? How the teachers do their teaching, right? The different new inter apps that are used, no? For example, Kahoot. I'm not using Kahoot, no, but Kahoot used to be very revolutionary a few years ago, but now Kahoot is like Kahoot na naman, no? So, it's again relative to time period. Next is the relative to context. So, for instance, no, again, going back to COVID-19 pa rin tayo, no? So, again, the online delivery during that prior to COVID-19 was again very niche, but because now the context is that we are in a social distancing, no? So this is both time and context. There is a forced lockdown, there is confinement, there is limited mobility, and there are barriers in terms of accessing goods and services during this time of the pandemic. Then, companies were forced to innovate, were forced to digitalize their services, etc., etc. And also, during this time, there were new innovations that were coming up. The air purifier, which I don't think also like completely works, no, or the face shield, which again I also don't think it works, no, and of course the creativity of how masks and PPEs are done, no? Frugal innovations, no. So again, relative to context. Again, I think also that's one of the contexts. No, if you're living in a developed country, when you talk about innovation, it's always like the digital, industrial, modern, highly technological stuff, no? But in places underdeveloped countries and developing countries like in the Philippines and those who are poorer than us, innovation can be as simple as using banana leaves as a mask. Again, because context, no. But if you go to other countries and then use a banana leaf for your mask, it's not very innovative, no? And that's where frugal innovation comes in, no. Within our means, no, we are able to create new ways of thinking and doing and protecting ourselves from COVID with the materials that we have. Especially nung time na there was a big lack of access to masks. Yeah. And then one of the reasons why innovation is very much connected to sociology is because innovation relies with the contribution of different social actors, no? Managers in companies, investors, no, who make capital investments, the researchers and inventors who create the form and factor of this innovations, no. We also talk about the people who are buying and consuming these innovative products and services, no? The people who distribute these innovative services. So there are social actors, no? And therefore, since we are social actors, we do not live in a vacuum. And these social actors are influenced by different social institutions. Thus, the use of sociology as a lens of understanding how innovations are successful or not successful, or allowed or not allowed, is a very relevant lens to look into. No? So again, social actors are needed for the generation, the implementation, the use and diffusion of these innovations. We also have to understand that innovation is different from change. So one of the key things here is when you go back to the second phase is that there should be a decision to change. There should be a decision to create something new. It has to be intentional. Sometimes change isn't so intentional. Like when you become sick, there's a change there, but it doesn't necessarily mean innovation. There's a change in your life, but it doesn't necessarily mean an innovation because there's nothing really new that comes out of it, and it wasn't really born out of a problem or a need. So change is broader, no? Like for example, there is climate change. It's a consequence of innovation, but climate change is not an innovation. It's a cause of the many innovations that we've done, no? And again, change can be intended and unintended, and usually the change that is related, that the change that eventually becomes an innovation are those that are intended. And then we always have to remember that innovation is the doing of new things, no? The main qualifier here is the word new, or doing of things that are already being done but in a new way. So the word is new, no? So, and I think also that's, when you listen to iPhone haters, 'di ba? Parang that's already been done before. So that's not so innovative. Probably within, 120 refresh rate. That is not an innovation. Well, according to the Apple haters. That is not an innovation because we've seen that before. Diba? But they would argue but within the iPhone line, this is a new way for us doing it. So it's an innovation for us. So, etc., etc. No? So I think the newness, is where innovation comes in and where it departs from the usual change that we just observe in society and from the products and services that we receive and consume. And then also, innovation is not necessarily invention and vice versa. So, invention means to conceive new products and processes. So, when you invent things, contrary to what we are usually taught when we were younger, inventors are usually the ones who create the mental models and the research to be able to create those tangible things. But the actual tangible things that is the outcome of your invention is your innovation. So innovation is putting these new ideas in practice for the first time. And innovation is not only reliant on one social actor, which is the inventor. It is also reliant on the entrepreneur who gets the things done, who invests the money for the creation of that thing, who sets up distribution channels for whatever that thing you're going to create, diba? And who's going to support it with marketing. No? So that whole process differentiates an invention from an innovation, at least in the context of Schumpeter in 1947. And, which is of course no surprise to you probably, innovation does not always bring positive results. And we know there's so many innovations, like plastic used to be so innovative when it was earlier discovered. Cell phones were so innovative when it was discovered in 2007. The smartphone specifically, yung iPhone, diba? And then of course, cell phones were there already earlier than smartphones were there, no? And we always thought it's a good thing, but now we see a lot of our lives influenced by smartphones in a negative way. We are in this political hellhole because of smartphones, not only in the Philippines but elsewhere. And then of course we know that plastics that used to be an innovative eureka moment during the early periods of the 1900s is now the reason for our demise environmentally. So again, not all innovations bring positive results, and therefore as innovation studies scholars and also innovation sociologists, we have to approach innovations with a neutral stance. We always have to think that there are positives, but definitely somewhere out there, if we look at it if we examine the innovations in a very critical manner, we'll also be seeing negative consequences of any innovation that has been put forth. So therefore, all innovation should be open for critique if we're looking at it from a sociological lens. And of course, we know that innovations are also subject to failures. Not all innovations are, like a sample of failures of innovation is the Dengvaxia vaccine as a failed innovation. the attempt of to being smartphone among Nokia failed economically. No, they cannot really compete with Samsung and LG or iPhone. And there are other many innovations that really didn't work, and comes with process and also products. Okay, so next we'll discuss about economic innovation, because there are different types of innovation in terms of which sector they're found. So when you talk about economic innovation, so this is the process of change that introduces new economic regulatory elements. For example, in the needs that are met, so the products and the services that are basically coming into the economy, and then goods and services produced and modes of production. So the way the process of manufacturing, or producing, and also the way they're distributed and the way the products and services are used. So therefore, economic innovations are not just limited to technological innovation. So there can also be innovations in terms of marketing, innovations in terms of distribution. And let's look at the relationship between economic sociology, or the sociology of the economic sector, and innovation. So again, like we said, the needs and the actors it consider are not only those of the market. So it's not only within the market, the actors of the market that is influenced by innovation or is related to innovation. We also understand that different social and institutional factors, in addition to the economic sector, are found in each phase of the process, like the government or schools, academia, or even the religious institutions are also related to innovation, and the extent to which innovations are being diffused into society is also influenced by more informal institutions such as the family, such as religion, etc., etc. And therefore, which asserts the importance of why we need to look at innovation from a sociological lens. So according to the Oslo Manual, there are 4 types of innovation. The first one is the product innovation, which is basically the innovations that are tangible to us, that are technological in nature. Next, we have process innovation. So process innovation is new ways of doing things or producing things. For example, when we do education, the new process of education that we're using now is online education. So of course, there are products within that innovation, but the overall implementation of education to online classes is also a process innovation. And then we also have organizational innovation, changes in an organizational structure in a given company or organization in order to meet new needs. For example, in the LSU, for instance, there's a new organizational innovation that has come in. We have now a specific school for lifelong learning, so that there is already a focus on continuing development programs, and continuing professional development programs are already there's already a specific organizational affordance in the LSU, and we call it School for Lifelong Learning. So that's an example of organizational innovation. And then also marketing innovation, which is new innovations in terms of promotions, in terms of distribution, and in terms of connecting with consumers. And of course, there's this can also be in terms of communicative devices. Like siguro I think one of the leading marketing innovators throughout the last decades, for instance, Apple. The way they were the ones who innovated the product launches, with a very technological way of presenting their new products, which eventually other technological and other smartphone companies also followed suit. And then another typology of innovation based on the degree of newness, we have the incremental innovation. So an example of an incremental innovation is, smartphone 10, 11, 12, 13 These are just incremental innovations because you're not developing a new smartphone. It's still the same. Like, it has the same functions of a smartphone, only delivered in a better functionality. And then, of course, there are radical innovations. So, for example, in terms of music delivery, we can think of Spotify. When it entered the scene, it changed the way we consume music. Another would be Netflix. When it entered the scene, it changed the way we consumed videos, movies, and series. So that's radical innovation. That's, disruption. Ika nga in business language. Another form of innovation is the architectural innovation, wherein instead of it's an example of an incremental innovation wherein we just rearrange the parts of the previously known innovation. Like, for example, new form factor for a smartphone. Now we have a foldable phone. So that's an example of an architectural innovation. Next, we have the shifts in technological systems. So this is a type of shift in our society wherein a whole sector is influenced because of the introduction of a very special innovation. Like, for example, smartphones. When smartphones were introduced in the last 2 decades, it definitely, influenced the way we do things in terms of consuming other products. Have also been very smartphone centric, and it was abruptly influenced further when the COVID-19 came along. So yeah, smartphones have changed the technological system. And then also we have techno-economic paradigms wherein it doesn't just change or inform other technologies, but it also influences the economic products or economic systems as well. Again, going back to smartphones, Kasi, for example, in smartphone, the way it changed technological systems is that the other new devices have also had been digital, had been mobile, had been ubiquitously connected to the internet, because of the smartphone. So these are technological systems, but also at the same time, the production and distribution of other goods, and the way we do commerce have also been influenced, and these are economic systems influenced by the presence of smartphones in our lives. So for the last slide, we'll talk about what innovation studies is all about. So innovation studies, because we have the second word studies, it's interdisciplinary in nature. So sociologists are just a pool of people within the larger body of innovation studies. So we have here, of course, the inventors themselves, and then of course we have here other social scientists like economists, political scientists, and of course we have business related sciences, like organizational management or organizational development, and also entrepreneurship studies. So the focus here is on the theme of economic innovation and not other forms of innovations like cultural or social innovations. And at the moment, it's burgeoning a large community of scholars. And it possesses shared intellectual references and research centers. But for our studies, for our class now, we'll focus on the contribution of sociology in innovation studies, looking at the lenses and the affordances provided to us by sociology, specifically economic sociology in innovations. So in this video, we were able to talk about the definition of innovation and the characteristics of innovation. We're also able to talk about the sociology of economic innovations, and also we were able to talk about innovation studies.